Merry Christmas to everyone, except for those gun-controlling Grinches who voted to throw billions of dollars at infringing on the Second Amendment. I'm Ben Sanderson, and you're watching the Minuteman Moment. The United States Senate is supposed to be the greatest deliberative body on the earth, with the finest speechmakers and debaters elected by their fellow citizens. In reality, there is nothing these politicians hate more than debating. That's why they voted to move forward on a $1.7 trillion, 4,155-page omnibus package at 6 p.m., and that was released at 1:30 in the morning. For those of you not fluent in swamp talk, an omnibus package is essentially Congress's emergency budget get-out-of-jail-free card that they pull out whenever they fail to actually pass spending bills before the government runs out of money. This last-second duct tape measure is ripe for abuse, as they'll pull the same old game of giving us no time to read it and try to force it through a vote immediately. I don't know about you, but it doesn't sound possible to read more than 4,000 pages in less than 18 hours. Keep in mind, most of these senators are asleep at 1:30 a.m. and have had even less time to read this trillion-dollar bill. But not GOA. We worked around the clock to analyze these gun-related provisions and alert staffers on Capitol Hill all about them. Since this bill funds everything in the government for fiscal year 2023, there's a lot we could skip over. But there is also still a ton to look at. This bill gives the ATF a massive budget hike, which will be used for gun registration, gun confiscation, and the imminent facilitation of Biden's new pistol ban. But that's not the only funding given to the ATF. Because our crack team of lobbyists, myself included, looked over the whole bill, we found a lot more anti-gun provisions snuck in all kinds of places. Here's a brief list of what we found. Directing VA medical centers to utilize confiscation orders on vulnerable veterans, because nothing says we respect those who serve by taking their rights away. Department of Education to push mandatory safe storage of parents' firearms, because Merrick Garland thinks parents concerned about schools are domestic terrorists. Funding for VA to maintain gun storage maps to keep tabs on where veterans keep their guns. Because knowing how many guns you have isn't good enough. The feds need to know exactly where in the house they are just before they confiscate them. New annual compensation for families of deceased ATF agents could be an indication of upcoming gun confiscation. Gun control earmarks for Orchid healing circles, and more. Because public funds for traumatized victims of violence should be spent to traumatize them again with Orchid healing circles.
We used to meet in person, but now because of this situation, we put that online. But now, people from all over the world can access to this healing circle. That's wonderful.
Dickey violations galore, while CDC suppresses self-defense statistics. Because it's easier to fund bad research with untrustworthy agencies like the CDC with your hard-earned tax dollars. Programs discouraging women from exercising their Second Amendment rights. Because I guess the government doesn't believe in women's rights if that right includes the right to keep and bear arms. There's also anti-gun community violence intervention initiatives. Because it wouldn't be fair if only the federal government was oppressive. The state and local governments can oppress you too. And last but not least, violent anti-government ideology and domestic radicalization research. Because if you ever said shall not be infringed, you probably need to be investigated for terrorism. Worst of all, Mitch McConnell is already on board with this trillion-dollar gun grab. He stated that the omnibus achieves all of his priorities.
Making sure the Defense Department can deal with the major threats coming from Russia and China, providing assistance for the Ukrainians to defeat the Russians. That's the number one priority for the United States right now, according to most Republicans. That's sort of how we see the challenges confronting the country at the moment.
After McConnell just shunned gun owners in the midterm elections, we need to speak up and ensure that our priorities are heard loud and clear to stop this train wreck of a bill before it's voted on by the end of the week. Please click the link in the description to add your name to our pre-written letter to both your representative and to senators, pressuring them to vote no on the $1.7 trillion omnibus that has gun control buried inside of it. At a time when most Americans are struggling with inflation, the ATF gets nearly $2 billion at its disposal to enforce its gun grabs, like the Biden pistol ban. The sick thing about all these budget increases is there isn't an indication that they'll be spent on expediting the process of registering all these pistol braces. Leaks suggest that you'll be forced to give the ATF your name, social security number, address, phone number, email, payment information, fingerprints, as well as the make, model, serial number of your firearm, and also provide photographic evidence of your compliance. Failure to comply could result in jail time and a $250,000 fine, and the confiscation of all your firearms. This year, the ATF showed up at a gun owner's home in Delaware, demanding information on his firearms, all apparently without a warrant.
Yeah. You have them with you by any chance? Are they? If you can unload them and bring them out, or you can go out to your foyer here, check them out, like serial number, and we're out of here.
That's it?
Yep.
That's it. It'll take 5 seconds. The reason we're out here is we're obviously gun violence has been an uptick, so we want to make sure we don't have a lot of issues with straw purchases.
Needless to say, it's reprehensible that so-called pro-gun senators would even consider rewarding the ATF with more taxpayer dollars after engaging in such tyrannical behavior. On top of that, this omnibus gun control bill would give the ATF $14 million to modernize the illegal gun registry that the agency is already compiling. Through GOA's efforts, we eventually learned that the ATF has created a registry containing almost 1 billion gun records. And as you know, gun registration is frequently the first step towards gun confiscation. The ATF's registry needs to be defunded, not rewarded with millions of extra dollars. That's why it's critical that we take this moment not only to play defense, but also to go on the offense against the ATF and Biden's anti-gun policies. Our pre-written letter not only tells Congress to vote no on this disastrous bill, but also what appropriation riders should be included in this bill. But with McConnell already showing support for this train wreck of a bill, we need to turn up the heat on Congress before the government funding deadline on Friday. So please, hit the link in the description to our pre-written letter to both your representative and 2 senators, pressuring them to vote no on this $1.7 trillion omnibus that has gun control buried inside. Don't forget to subscribe for more updates. We'll see you next time.